Wake up a
Yeah,
little
I
later and
mean,
do something else with your time?
yeah, I'm able to, leave. Still wake up at the same time, but there's always that extra 15 minutes of cushion in the summer now that
Yeah.
I can drop off. So I can
Right.
sleep in a little bit more, and then I get to work a little earlier as well. But it's kind of miss him too when I don't drop him off in the morning. In that conversation time in the morning.
Yeah, you
So
miss it for sure.
yeah, it's because as how busy as we are, that morning time is one time that is just me and him just kind of hanging out talking, and then when I come home, it's kind of like just go go go, feeding each of the kids, them playing, running around, getting them ready for bed. So that evening time is a little hectic. uh,
Yeah, it's more stressful at this age, the
yeah,
dinner time, than than it is fun and chill.
yeah, yeah, dinner takes a while. Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, I mean, I don't know how it is for you, but I mean, my schedule is like 7 to 7:38 until they go to sleep. I mean, it's nonstop. There's barely any time for myself, which is it's fun. I mean, with the kids, it's fun, but it is exhausting as well. You know, and
Yeah.
even how taxing work is, and you a lot of people say that they had a busy day because they had 4 meetings or 5 meetings. I on a daily basis sometimes have 25 to 27 meetings, and in those 27 meetings I'm in charge of documenting and taking notes and creating the agenda and the plan for each person that I'm having a meeting with. So those patient encounters are meetings, right? I mean,
Yeah, every
most
clinic
people,
patient is a meeting.
yeah, most people have 3 to 4 meetings a day. They talk about, and there's multiple people, and they in a lot of people's meetings they can just kind of put themselves on mute and kind of check out a little bit and kind of do some work in the background, where it's tough to do that in our profession.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to just move the mouse when you're in a room with the patient looking at you.
Yeah, yeah. So
I
it's
hear you,
a
man. It's tough to like carve out time for yourself. I mean, the work obligations, the professional obligations don't just end at work. They come home with you in some fashion. And then your family stuff, like it's hard during the work week. I mean, whether you're on call or not. I
yeah,
think it's hard. It's really hard for me to find time, just like to go to the gym or hang out with a friend or something, or my brother who's in town. It's almost like you've got to plan ahead for everything, which makes it a little annoying. I mean, it takes the spontaneity out of life because there's just so much stuff to do every day.
yeah. It's even when I was on vacation last week, and we were traveling. That's why we haven't done a podcast in a while. Both of us have been kind of out of town, uh, and even while I was traveling away, I had messages in the clinic, and the staff had questions about patients, and I had to like refill medications. I'm a solo cardiologist with private practice. There's no real coverage. I mean, no one knows my patients really well. No one really has access to my EMR to be able to send those medications. I can always have someone cover for emergencies in the hospital, but in my clinic patients that need refills, I mean, they need refills because they're patients within my EMR, and that I'm the only one who can send in. And most people wait till that one week that I'm on vacation to call for refills.
It's like, how do so many people need their statins refilled this week?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's the one time I'm like, you don't need a statin this week.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It can wait.
yeah, but it does take a toll. I mean, where do you find? So I had this theory with we used to joke about that. There's only there's four major things in life, and you can't do all four. Like be have a social life, be a dad, exercise, and be
And be good at your
successful
job.
be good at your job. You have to let go of one, at least, if not two.
Yeah, no kidding.
And a lot of time for most physician dads or most busy guys who have like pretty demanding jobs, the social life tends to be the one they cut out the most, right?
Yeah, dude, I think people, unfortunately, they cut out social life and they also cut out self-care. That includes exercise, going to your doctor regularly, eating healthy, eating on time, not just regularly skipping meals, and that becomes a routine, skipping sleep, being sleep deprived. I put all of that in the same basket of self-care, including exercise, and I think that lags behind. I mean, I don't lag behind on exercise because it's just like it's very important for me. But I mean, for sure, I'm like probably chronically sleep deprived. I sleep poorly and I don't sleep that often. Um, I wake up really early and go to bed late, and that's not a good thing. And it's not a sense of pride. It's like it's stupid. It's just like you got to get stuff done, and there's only so much time in the day to do it. So you're working on stuff,
Exactly.
and you go to sleep late, and you got to wake up early and keep doing it.
Yeah.
There's just isn't extra time to focus on it.
There's this whole idea of revenge sleep too, right? Where you've been so busy all day that at nighttime that's the only few quiet hours in the day that you find that a lot of people tend to stay up late and do some work or do some reading or whatever they weren't able to do in the day. That's the that's that's the whole idea of revenge sleep. That's why a lot of
Right,
times
right.
people end up getting bad sleep because they just stay up late because that's the only quiet time they get.
Yeah, and
um,
it's like, you finally get like a little bit of moment to focus and do things that you like really want to do, really looking forward to. Like you get a new book and you really just want to sit and read it.
yeah.
And the rest of the whole day you've just been doing stuff you need to do, you have to do. You got to do your job, you
Yeah.
got to come home to help take care of the kids and interact with them, like play with them, take them to their jiu-jitsu class, go swimming, whatever. And finally the kids go to sleep, you and your spouse talk for a bit and she goes to sleep and I'm like, okay, I can just sit for like 10 minutes and like read this book. Maybe get through 3 pages and I'm nodding off. I'm like, God damn it. I guess I'll
Yeah,
go to sleep.
that's why it takes me forever to read through books because anytime I start
Yeah.
reading, it's so late and I'm just
Yeah.
tired, exhausted. In terms of exercise, I've kind of had this strategy where I've now put exercise on my calendar, like on my work calendar. I have that hour exercise built out. So no matter what, I mean, everyone knows no meetings scheduled at that time, no other events at that time is for exercise. Sometimes you have to do that, and I tell my patients that you have to find that time where you have to treat exercise like it's something mandatory. It's part of a meeting you have to attend. It's for yourself. It's a meeting with yourself, and there's no compromise around it because uh, it's okay sometimes. We think that it's okay to kind of ignore our health in our 30s and 40s because life is busy, but then it catches up with you. And I see so many people with severe metabolic and coronary disease. It's scary, man. It's getting people are getting disease earlier and earlier. Um,
Right.
and
I mean,
exercise,
let me ask you this. Like, do you see your primary care doctor at least once a year?
unfortunately, I am my primary care doctor.
So
You know,
that
I
means
do.
no.
Yeah, I did this thing where I got, it's not the right thing to do, and I think there's been self-treatment has shown to not be ideal. But what I've kind of done is I got Function Health, which is this once a year you can pay for the service, one-time fee, and then you can get as many lab tests a year, up to 4 or 5 times a year. You can check your labs. So I at least twice a year I get my labs done, check my insulin levels and A1C levels, lipids and
Yeah.
blood count, and kind of keep track of it. And just then now I've started doing this thing where a lot of I tell my patients not to do, but I'm doing it because I am a slightly more educated in that area. But I've started running ideas about my labs with some of the AI agents as well, and kind of make sure that what I'm thinking is the right thing to do.
Right,
I
right.
don't think I advise that yet for everyone. I think that's the future where it will happen. But I think, given my background, and I'm a trained physician and a cardiologist, I feel a little bit more comfortable doing that, even though there are biases, right? I know
Bro, I'm hearing a lot of justification for not seeing your actual PCP.
I don't have a PCP. I haven't seen a PCP in years, and it's not good. And that's kind of what we're
Yeah.
talking about, where we ignore our health. But sometimes, I went to a PCP, primary care doctor, and the stuff that I wanted to check and wanted to do, that person was not even aware of those labs that needed to be done, or the medications that need to be started early on. So at that point, I was like, is this? I don't see the
Yeah.
point of it at that time. Unfortunately for myself, and that's
Yeah, I
me
mean,
being fully honest.
think of it in this way. Like, let's say you have a 1990 Chevy pickup truck, and that's your daily driver. You could probably take it anywhere to get the oil changed, to get it tuned up, and it'll be fine. But let's say now you have a sick sports car. I don't know, you got a Ferrari or something. You're not going to take it to Jiffy Lube, probably. You're probably going to take it to somewhere, I don't know. nicer, more expensive, a little more thorough, somewhere where you have a direct input and conversation with, the mechanic, the staff, everyone that services your car. You kind of think of your body in that same way. I mean, if you take care of yourself and you want to take care of yourself and you want to be high performing, like the Ferrari in this example, instead of going to a run of, like, not in a dismissive way, but a run of the mill dock in the box PCP, like what you're talking about, seek out a PCP or an internist or someone who has a great reputation, is known for taking the next step, like a direct care model, concierge model. You know what I mean? Like, it may not be for everybody because
Yeah.
entry price point or the amount of stuff you want to do, how specific you're going to be because of the knowledge you already have. Just being a doctor and being in cardiology and doing preventative health and preventative cardiology. But you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't think the exact same type of primary care doc, the exact same type of routine checklist primary care visit is for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, as physicians, I think we do truly need a different type of care, because the kind of questions that we have and kind of things that we look into, and I think that kind of access is opening up to everyone, because everyone knowledge is becoming a commodity, right? I mean, anyone can look up and what are some ideal labs to order for myself, and people are coming into my clinic with pretty complex questions. I mean, they come in and they have a list of labs. They ask me why should they be ordering those labs, or should they not be? And and they have certain list of medications that they should be on. When I recommend medications, they always say, okay, let's discuss this after I've done some research. And knowledge has become like a thing where it's available on a few fingertips, and people look them up, read about it, and then we come and have a good discussion. One thing I'm noticing is a lot of people are coming in with, they talk to Claude or ChatGPT, and Claude and ChatGPT are pulling information from all kinds of websites and online data available, right? So there's a lot of extreme lab tests and unnecessary recommendations that are coming in, and people are bringing those in with not that much evidence behind them. Uh, and that's when my role comes in, where I kind of counsel them, hey, this is the good, what Claude suggested in this case, this is a good lab, and I think we should do this. But this one right there, your omega-3 index may not be the right lab right now, because there's not much we can do about it at this moment. Versus your lipoprotein A or your ApoB levels, yes, you're right, we need to check those, or HSCRP or whatever. So
Yeah.
that kind of counseling is happening, and I feel like I'm doing the same thing, but from a different angle. And you're right. I think me seeking out maybe a concierge level primary care that I can just kind of run ideas by, or have these open discussions with, might be the better option for me.
Yeah, it may just be what you need, right? Like to make yourself kind of what you're saying, feel comfortable and feel heard and, have your needs met.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. I mean, people have different requirements and what they want. One thing you mentioned that I think is really funny, like, patients almost like fact checking you or double checking you against like a large language model, like a Claude or a Perplexity or whatever. One of my friends, he's a rheumatologist, and he was texting me the other day about his like neighbor or someone that lives down the street that fell and they had an injury in the shoulder. And he was like, "Hey, this is like a picture of the X-ray he sent me, and I only have the MRI report. Like, what do you think?" And so I was telling him, I was like, "Look, it looks like he's torn his rotator cuff. He may have a biceps injury, whatever it is." And I was like, "I think this, and this is what he needs. Probably doesn't need surgery for this, and whatever. And I'm happy to see him if he wants, or he can see whatever. This is just, I was just texting him back and forth." And he's like, "Oh wow, you basically said the exact same thing that ChatGPT said." And so I texted him back. I was like, "So if I said something different, you wouldn't trust me, or you wouldn't trust ChatGPT? Like, where do you actually put your more of your stock in? Like, whose word do you believe more? Someone who's a dual fellowship trained orthopedic surgeon that does this every single day, or some random large language model that combs the internet and collects all of the shit, good and bad, and gives you a response in an articulate way?" It's just so funny that he, as another physician and someone like I know, like mentioned that. I was like, okay, like, what
Yeah, I
does
mean, this
that
is
mean?
happening every day.
It's
Dude, I
every
can't
day,
even tell you how much is happening every day, where patients are coming in with a list of questions
right?
and already have put in their labs into, Claude or Perplexity.
Yeah.
They come in with the labs. They have recommendations. They're not telling me what they recommended. They're waiting for my answer. And once I give
Yeah.
them my recommendation, they're like, "Oh, wait, I guess you're right. Yeah, you
Yeah,
said
it's almost like,
every."
yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
When
"Yeah,
you're in like fourth grade doing math problems and you turn to the back of the book to get the answer, it's almost like they feel like they have the back of the book answers. Like, dude, a lot of this stuff is not cut and dry. I mean, there's a spectrum of injury, there's a spectrum of treatment options depending on you as the patient, your age, your activity level, the extended. I mean, there's so much stuff. I just think it's hilarious that it's like as if, okay, well, Claude said it. It's got to
yeah,
be the right
it must
choice.
be true. Yeah, it must be true."
Yeah.
I mean, I've done kind of like exactly what some of these patients are doing, and I can kind of parse through the BS, right? And the recommendations that come in and do this and do that, but you can tell that it's getting it's ideas from all kinds of sources, and some of it is not legitimate. Some of this is not actionable. Some of it is not even a test that is available, right? But we know that. But when someone comes in with those exact lab tests and they ask you about it, you're like, well, I mean, that this doesn't even exist. How do you explain that to a person that Claude is not right and it's over analyzing and it's but
Yeah, and
this will be
all that stuff, like those things, those programs are missing context.
yeah.
They're not sitting in front of a patient and assessing them. Like one person who's 65, super active, healthy, fit, goes to the gym, doesn't take a single pill is very different than your 65-year-old that rolls into your clinic in a wheelchair. But if the patient is not divulging all of the details of their life, they don't know that. But you can see that in a human being when they're sitting across from you when you're talking to them.
Yeah.
I think the context is so important to put in perspective. It's not just a lab value in isolation, an MRI finding in isolation. The whole picture really matters so much.
Yeah, but some of it will change, and these models are getting so good. And with the advent of wearables, our lab data being readily available, being able to put that in, all these lab apps and your health medical records being connected now. Claude, Perplexity, all of those can connect to your EMRs and extract all your personal health information along with your wearable data, your vitals, your weight, all that stuff, and along with that labs. I think it's not far off where patients will be coming in with legitimate information, and they will be coming to us maybe for the action, not for the advice. Which I can see it happening eventually. Like, okay, I need, this is what I need and this is what I want to get done. What do you think? Are you going to do it, or should I go to someone else? And
Yeah.
I do think we are getting to a point because I'm seeing this trend of these 40 to 50-year-old men, mostly men, women too, but men that are super hyper obsessed with optimizing their health. They want that optimal last 5% of health. They're doing wearables. They're collecting hyper data. They're plugging it all into Excel and into these LLM models. They're keeping track of their labs almost every other month, and they're creating these graphs and being hyper focused about their sleep. And it's a new trend, and that kind of goes along with people then using supplements or injectables, GLPs and peptides now, which are becoming much more mainstream, and using those to kind of gain that optimization. I am listening on these mainstream podcasts now, like the Diary of a CEO is Stephen Bartlett or Joe Rogan. They constantly have physicians come in and talk about peptides and the whole Maha
Yeah,
movement.
it's everywhere. I mean, like everything online that you read about wellness, health, longevity, it's all peptides, peptides, peptides.
Yeah.
And we've talked about peptides a bunch on this show, and the short and dirty of it is the vast majority of these peptides for so-called optimization, musculoskeletal health, tendon healing, rejuvenation, they have no real clinical data. It's all extrapolated. There's very strong and consistent and reliable animal studies that have been done in multiple animal models, in with multiple different peptides, multiple different areas of those animal bodies for tendon healing, fracture healing, cartilage restoration, preservation of the joint. I mean, it's so much stuff. There's a lot of real data, but again, there's no real clinical data. And so what you're talking about, Hamayo, I agree. There's a lot of hype about it. And it's almost like it's being rushed forward. Whether you think peptides are promising or not, they're being used in a way that other medications in the past have not been. They have not been through rigorous testing. They haven't been through a series of clinical trials. They're kind of just being pushed using this gray zone of a research chemical so that anyone can source them and inject them however they want. And now you have the anecdote. And like you, I got so many patients in clinic that use them, that ask about them. I mean, I just repaired this guy's like on real steroids, like high dose testosterone replacement therapy. He's an older guy, but I mean, he's just jacked, and he tore his distal biceps. I just fixed it, and he was like arguing with me in clinic about like, can I inject like day one, day two after surgery? His incision isn't even healed. Can I start injecting BPC 157 into my incision to make it heal faster? I was like, dude, you're gonna get an infection. Like, just don't do that. And he's like, but I've read about it. And I was like, that's great. You've read nothing meaningful to me. And so, as your surgeon, I'm recommending strongly that you don't inject some random thing you bought from a pharmacy that is labeled BPC 157, but you don't really know what it is. Like, you don't inject it.
Yeah. I mean, so far these all these drugs have been category two drugs, and they're not even allowed to be compounded at legitimate this 503A and 503B pharmacies, right? So 503A, 503B pharmacies is these are 503A pharmacy. So kind of going back in the day before mass production, people would have some disease and they would be referred by their doctor to apothecary, like a local pharmacist that would mix up
Dude,
different
apothecary
ingredients.
makes me think of like Harry Potter, like Middle Ages Europe. Some dude
Really,
with that, like, that beak looking mask, like the
yeah,
plague masks.
yeah. I mean, people used to, these pharmacists used to mix up different medications and kind of customize the medication for the people, and then mass production came and large size pharmaceutical came and they started mass producing medications, and then medications were not so personalized, but there's a whole belief in people that not everyone responds to medication a certain way. The a dose of 20 milligrams of rosuvastatin might be good for one person but might not be good for another person with a different body size. So yeah, they believe that medication should be compounded to a personal to a specific person. And that's where 503A pharmacies come in, where these are smaller pharmacies regulated by the pharmacy board, and they're focused on providing compounded medications directly to patients, whereas 503B pharmacies are kind of like they're regulated by the FDA, and they're mass scale production. They supply compounded medications to hospitals and clinics directly rather than directly to patients. So that's the main difference. So far, there's these two types of compounding pharmacies that have different regulatory bodies, and these peptides are not even allowed to be compounded. So they are currently, so far up till this recent change, had been category two chemicals, and
Which
they were
means,
sold.
but just for everyone listening, I mean, not many people, I mean, I wasn't until we researched this, what categories mean when the FDA is classifying drugs. These are different than like a Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3 drug, which we prescribe. The categories of these drugs, Category 2 is a restricted drug, which is like, can't use it, can't make it, can't compound it, which is a stark thing. But I think what you were talking about is a lot of these drugs very recently have been taken off. These peptides have been taken off from category two, meaning they're no longer explicitly restricted. That
Yeah,
doesn't mean they're approved, but they're not explicitly restricted anymore.
yeah. I mean, so far people were able to sell these medications because they were marketing them as for research use only,
Yeah,
right? So
research chemical.
research chemicals. So they were able to sell those because these were research for research purposes. So someone could buy it theoretically to test it on their rat or on their animal, right? It was for that purpose, but most people were using it on themselves. But now they've been removed from that category two, where there's going to be a vote on July 23rd by it's the pharmacy compounding advisory committee, and this was green lighted by RFK Jr., where these compounds were moved away from category two, and there'll be a vote by this committee to see if these compounds can be moved to category one, where they'll be allowed to be compounded by these pharmacies. And I know
Which should be
RFK
really,
Jr.
I'm really interested to see what happens because, that PCAC, that PCAC group, they've basically voted against peptides in every single one of these things since
Yeah,
2024. But now that RFK Jr. is involved, and he's a very vocal, outspoken person regarding anything and everything that is not traditional medicine. not in only a bad way, but he's just very much into the wellness longevity thing. Um, but to the point in some areas of being like an anti-vaxxer, making false claims. So a little bit of farce and a little bit of danger in a lot of the stuff he says. But the whole podcast sphere, and especially podcasters like you mentioned Joe Rogan earlier, some of these podcasters have such a huge following and reach, and also a lot of political impact. I mean, he was crucial in getting Trump via text message to start re-looking at certain medications. Like
Yeah.
people like Rogan could, and others like him, could really push for this, and with their influence over the political side, I mean, they could bypass a lot of the traditional mechanisms where medications become legal and become utilized by patients.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's being rushed through because RFK. I'm sure he believes that he only has 2 or 3 more years to kind of push the agenda of getting this non-mainstream kind of not anti-medicine, but kind of off the regular route anti-big pharma kind of compounds out to the public, and they're pushing it through without much evidence. Where the biggest trial with BPC 157, which is one of the most popular peptides, is two patients. Two
Yeah.
patients, two patients got the drug, and they said they did fine.
Yeah, the whole
So
study was basically they took one man, one woman, and they gave him an IV dose of 20 milligrams of it, and they're like, okay, well, they didn't die.
yeah.
It's
But
like,
there's the whole. If you look at on the other side, I mean, there's potential in the future because I'm pretty involved in the clinical research world, and even in the clinical research world, the idea of real world evidence trials is becoming big. I know orthopedics has always been kind of like that, where they do a lot more real world evidence trials. They don't have to go through those phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four trials. They do a lot of the devices get real world data, and they extrapolate the safety and efficacy of the device based on those. So that's kind of happening as well in the pharmaceutical world, where a lot of big pharmaceutical companies are focusing on real world evidence trial, with especially with the advent of AI and able to process large scale data quickly. Um, what now they're able to look at is getting data from wearables, from EMRs, patients' reactions, their vitals, from services like remote physiological monitoring, where patients check their blood pressures and weight every day, uh, and extrapolate that to kind of prove efficacy of certain medications for certain indications. So that's happening. I can see that happening with peptides, where a lot of real-world evidence trials can be done very cheaply. Gather data from doctors' offices and their EMRs of patients who are taking these peptides, and then extrapolate that data and see, okay, there is efficacy. But right now, we don't have legitimate phase one to phase three, phase four trials for these.
yeah, and that's where I think like in my opinion, it's harder to define efficacy in something that is not a medication treating a condition. Like these peptides, they're a different type of drug that I don't really think has existed before. That they're not really purpose built to treat blank. Like they're not a statin to lower cholesterol. They're not a metoprolol to treat, as a beta blocker, your heart and your blood pressure and stuff. They're not an anti-inflammatory, acting in an NSAID pathway. These medications have a vast array of effects, and a lot of the effects, at least that are being touted anecdotally and in animal studies, are in general benefiting and maintaining the health and integrity of like tendon and soft tissue structures, ligament structures, things like that, accelerating healing, which those are harder things to track. Like, are you getting rotator cuff tendinosis or not? That's not something that can really be tracked by lab data, by wearables, by an EHR, unless you're doing serial advanced imaging, like serial MRIs, which no one is doing because no one is paying for that. No one can afford that. So a lot of this stuff regarding, the most common peptides used by your typical weekend warrior athlete type guy, between 40 to 60 years of age that goes to the gym, has a little bit of ligament issues, has tendonitis here and there, and they want to inject it so that they avoid surgery, but they don't want to just use steroids. They want to use something that they believe is actually regenerative. That's hard to track. And I don't know how that's actually going to be tracked. It's easy to track safety profiles using wearables data for sure and adverse effects, but real efficacy, a lot of it is based on how the patient feels and kind of parsing out how much is placebo versus actual objective improvement. And again, without real imaging data, I think that's going to be very challenging to do.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of similar kind of trials going on in the GLP world, where patients with no disease, healthy patients, are being given GLP-1 medication, and now we're doing, even doing trials in patients who are not obese or morbidly obese. They're just overweight or just, BMIs of over 25, and we're doing these obesity prevention trials where they are testing these GLP-1s for prevention of obesity in young patients, patients who are heading that route, patients who are developing poor metabolic health, and exposing them early to GLP-1 medications along with exercise. Does that help or not? So there are medication, and I think GLP-1s kind of opened the route for these peptides as well, because GLP-1 itself is a peptide. It was found, as we've talked about, in Gila monster saliva as well, and eventually it got uh, patented by large pharmaceuticals, and they were able to do clinical trials after stabilizing the molecule and kind of doing large scale studies. And now it's a highly, highly, highly profitable drug, which is running economies of a lot of countries. Uh, like Novo Nordisk is one of the largest companies wait, is it Sweden or Denmark? I forgot. I'm blanking out. Uh, yeah, one of the Scandinavian countries. Sorry. So it's kind of pretty much running the economy. So GLP-1, and I wonder why there's this whole argument that, oh, these compounds, these peptides occur naturally, so they cannot be patented. How are we able to do those trials and develop medications along with around GLP-1 medication, and why can't BPC 157 or other molecules like that be down the line studied and patented, and um, there could be a push from the pharmaceutical side behind that. Well, same with insulin, right? Same with insulin. I mean, our bodies produce insulin, our bodies produce GLP-1, but we were able to kind of find derivatives that they could be patented, they're more stable, and could be mass produced. So I mean, there's a lot of money to be made, and I doubt big pharmaceutical companies will kind of stay back and not want to kind of capitalize on this possible profit, because there's such a demand for it too. And I think with the with the change in this from this category two to maybe possibly going to category one, then it might open up to them wanting to do more real world evidence trials, and then maybe even package it and market it and sell it to mass markets. So let's see how things go. But one thing. Yeah, I mean, I hear your point. I just don't see how we do get large scale data and large scale trials without the backing of these pharmaceutical money companies that have all the money to do those trials, right? I don't see that happening without them, and without those large scale trials. Yeah, we would know that there's benefit through anecdotes, but we will not know if we give this drug to 20,000 people, will 20 of them develop cancer because of this drug? And just for that reason, I'll always be hesitant unless we have large scale data about these medications, and I'll be thinking twice or three times before giving it to myself, because I just don't know what I'm giving to myself, because I don't know how it acts long term in human bodies. We have now enough data on insulin. Now we have enough data on GLP-1s. We have enough data on statins to comfortably say and suggest it to our patients. But on these peptides, we don't have data. We know that it works. We know it possible. We just don't know what harms it causes. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of safeguards around it, and a lot of pharmacies double check and doctors double check, and there's screening methods to check for those things like pancreatitis and medullary thyroid cancer and men 1, men 2 syndrome. So yeah, you hope that people are doing it the right way, and selling these drugs and prescribing these drugs in a safe manner. But there's a lot of profiteering going on as well, where people are ignoring these safeguards and bypassing them just because they can sell these drugs pretty easily. And there's a demand. Yeah, yeah, exactly. When the pharmaceuticals are designing these clinical trials, a lot of times it's not to look at the efficacy of the drug itself. It's or to find the dangers of the drug. It's their hope is that they find the benefits that then eventually they can sell, or find certain data points that they can market. And that's always the whole point of the clinical trial. So it's tough, and we'll see. But one thing, people cannot do trials on, and we cannot people ignore, because everyone's ready to take these compounds, but exercise, right? Exercise is a big thing with people. For some reason, most people don't have the time to do, but they'd rather inject GLP-1s and these peptides. right? That's the hard part. And every day in my clinic, I'm having these conversations about exercise, and I do have a lot of patients on GLP-1 medications, but unfortunately, every time I talk to them about exercise, they're like, "Yeah, I know I need to exercise, I need to do strength training, but I'm not, and I don't have time, and I'd rather just lose the weight this way," which is hard. And they understand that they need to do it, but people are not. But we know that exercise does not mean spending 50 minutes every day in the gym just pushing yourself and really just tiring out your muscles. Mild to moderate amounts of exercise can be useful. And for a lot of my sedentary patients who are not doing anything, I just tell them, hey, just every day after dinner, just go for a 20-minute walk. That's the least you can start off with for now, and just some kind of movement every day, right? So for sedentary people, just any little movement is important, but most people are not doing it. Yeah, I think 5 minutes of exercise for someone who's not doing any exercise, it's still beneficial. Yeah, five is better than nothing. And I think that study was done in patients who were mostly sedentary, and it showed that people who at least did even 5 minutes of exercise had a much significant benefit compared to those who were not doing exercise. And we know that the exercise curve is not linear. It's more of a it kind of initially it rises up pretty fast and then it plateaus over time. But we know that there is an optimal amount of exercise where you get to a certain point, and after which there's a higher risk of injury, right? So for patients who are just starting out and are very late in their journey to exercise, my recommendation mostly is start slow, start small. Don't just tire yourself out with the first session. Don't go on and lift 150 pounds on the bench press and then start doing bicep curls with like 35 pounds on each side. Start slow, start with just the bar, start practice the movements to get the motion right. Even if you're not super sore and your muscles are not aching at the end of the day, that's okay. It's about the habit, getting there, getting some movement every day, 3 times a week, and getting used to being in the gym and doing the exercise. That's more important than actually doing a full heavy load workout where you're maximizing your weight count. Yeah. Yeah, my whole idea is that not everyone and majority of the people are just not used to exercise, and what we don't want is them to get overwhelmed right off the bat, that thinking that they have to do this amount of exercise every day. I think the main message to get to people is movement is good, exercise is good, some kind of resistance training is good. So first get started. Yeah, I agree. Eventually you need to get to that level where you're doing it appropriately and mastering it, and pushing yourself as you go. But majority of the population, I'd say 70 to 80% of the population gets very overwhelmed with exercise. And they get to the gym, and most of the people don't. They walk around and they try the familiar exercises they know, and then they stop. So I think it's important. I think it's an important idea to at least encourage people to go ahead and do movement daily, because the initial effect of you going from sedentary to doing some kind of movement is pretty significant. And I think that's what this article is trying to get to, rather than this is all you need. Yeah, yeah. But the one important thing is our body is an amazing set of organs, and there's a lot of different functions of the body that sometimes we're not even aware of. And this recent study that we both read kind of like just boggled my mind. It was kind of amazing what they found in pigeons, right? These homing pigeons, the pigeons that fly long distance and can kind of navigate through directions, and they found that their ability to kind of navigate and find their destination and find their way back home was dependent on the amount of iron stores they had, the iron macrophages they had in their liver cells, and in their liver, and there was some kind of interference with the magnetic fields and the iron available in livers that allowed them to navigate their way and use it as a compass to know direction. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for many years there's been this talk of like, a lot of people just say, I have this gut feeling about the environment. People are in a certain environment where they start feeling some kind of sense of danger, and they start noticing that there's something wrong with that area. That gut feeling you get, is there something more to that feeling now? You know, is there some kind of a, uh, like, you know, something like an iron store that's detecting certain danger, or magnetic fields around us that sense, you know, increasing our senses. You wonder that now because, you know, last time we talked about the dogs that were able to smell cancers, and now yeah, that's what it is. I mean, yeah, and as humans, our brains are so limited, and you know we use it to such a low capacity that some of us, and most of us, are not even able to sense a lot of these things. And people who are very in tune with their environment, right? Some people can, and I wonder now, some of those people that have can feel the aura or feel a certain the energy around them and can harness the energy and kind of manifest energy to other people around them. Are these people up to something? They're on to something. They must just be hacked. But you wonder if some of those gut feelings that people get there's a known phenomenon now, you know, in the gastroenterology field, where the gut brain axis, where a lot of the nerve cells in the gut, a lot of the microbiome and biome in the gut affects how we think and our brain fog, right? So there's a true this idea of the gut brain axis, and I wonder if there's more to that. And I think as we find out and we do more of these trials, you know, we're going to discover so many different unique abilities of animals to harness the environment around them to kind of navigate this world that we cannot even imagine right now. And who knows what kind of technologies we'll be able to develop because of that. You know, this that reminds me. This reminds me of this idea that, you know, science, it's never that hyper specialized field that finds breakthroughs. It's not that one person that's super hyper focused on one area and goes on and makes a major breakthrough. A lot of the major breakthroughs happen when people from one another field combine ideas of another field together, and they've come up with something unique that's was not known to the world. And I read this interesting book called Range, and it talks about how people who develop uh, you know, many different skill sets. They're not just hyper specialized into one field. They're not prodigies. These are people that gain knowledge from different principles, different ideas, different fields. They tend to do much better overall. They have a higher amount of intelligence and higher ability to make breakthrough discoveries in life compared to those who hyper specialize and are focused. Savant, yeah. I mean, there's these ideas with Malcolm Gladwell and, you know, even in Robert Greene's book about putting in 10,000 hours into one field to gain mastery. Uh, but a lot of evidence points against that too, because a lot of discoveries and are made because you combined ideas from one field, like, you know, animal biology, or the navigation patterns of pigeons, and then combine it with biology of the liver and macrophages and iron stores, and combining those two kind of, you know, you make these breakthrough discoveries, which kind of can be sometimes world altering, right? Yeah, yeah, and you know, even for example, if you think of someone like Leonardo da Vinci, you know, he was a Renaissance man, right? Kind of like literally, he was an artist, and because of his artist and his ability to visualize nature and humans, and he eventually ended up drawing up human bodies, and you know, wrote books on anatomy. You know, he developed, you know, he combined arts and science in a way that we were able to learn a lot more about the human anatomy because of him as well. Same with many other people. I mean, if you look at the people who made the biggest discoveries in the world, they did not just hyper focus and specialize in one field. They weren't just physicians or scientists or artists. They did multiple different things, and they learned about different things. They learned about philosophy, they learned about science, they learned about mathematics and physics. And because they learned about all these different principles, they were able to find patterns and make new discoveries. And I find a lot of physicians getting so bogged down, and all they do is just read medical articles and studies, and you know, only reading they do is in their own field, and they truly don't learn or reach out and kind of explore other areas of the world or other fields, and they're very hyper specialized rather than kind of increasing their range, which I wish more physicians did that, because I think medicine would be in a different place, and physicians as leaders would be in a different place as well. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was a nice break that we took from the podcast. Sometimes you got to get away to come back and appreciate what you were missing. So it's we'll be back, and we'll be producing more episodes. But this was a good one. Some interesting studies.